49ers mailbag coming your way here on the 49ers Report by Chat Sports. I am Chase Senior. Give me a follow on Twitter and Instagram at Chase_Senior. If I don't answer your question on today's live show, slide into my DMs and I'll answer any question you have about the Niners. Or if you want to let me know about your life, you can do that too, because we can chop it up in that regard as well. Let's get to this question from Polyester P to kick off this mailbag. Niner gang, what up? What up? Do you think Tom Brady was talking about Jimmy Garoppolo on the shop? So in case you missed it, and to producer Perry, I think we have this quote in the database because we covered it earlier this week. Tom Brady was on the shop on HBO, which is LeBron James and Maverick Carter's show, and a clip came out onto social media from that show of Tom Brady talking about his free agency experience. It's the first time he's ever been on the open market, and he had something really interesting to say, which a lot of people thought tied back to the Niners. This is what he had to say as producer Perry pops up this graphic. One of the teams, they weren't interested at the very end. I was thinking, you're sticking with that mother effer? What a legendary quote from Tom Brady. And a lot of people kind of thought that Brady was talking about Jimmy Garoppolo. Now, when you look back at some of the teams that were interested in Brady before he signed with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, it was teams like the Los Angeles Chargers, the Chicago Bears, the New Orleans Saints, the Tennessee Titans, as well as the San Francisco 49ers. Was he talking about Jimmy Garoppolo? Obviously, they have a relationship going back to New England. I put the chances of that somewhat low. I think who Brady was talking about was Mitchell Trubisky, because Trubisky, we found out, is somewhat of a scrub. That Bears team was able to make it to the playoffs. Other than the quarterback position, they were somewhat stacked, and it was a no-brainer to bring in Tom Brady. So maybe Brady, in saying, you're going with that mother effer, was talking about Mitchell Trubisky. I don't think he was talking about Jimmy Garoppolo. What do you think, though? Weigh in on this one. Man, the Twitter streets were on fire this past week talking about this subject because Niner fans were flooding to Twitter trying to defend Jimmy Garoppolo, and I'm defending him right now. Was he talking about Jimmy G, though? Type 1 for yes, type 2 for no. Be sure to get your votes in right now. Let's pivot to this question from Niner Faithful. Hey, Chase, do you think we should restructure Jimmy's contract, then sign Justin Houston or Melvin Ingram, and maybe take a chance on Earl Thomas to make our defense even better? I think that when it comes down to Jimmy G's contract, the move here would just be to trade him. And if Trey Lance starts to play extremely well and he exceeds expectations and he blows this coaching staff away, I think from week one, if he's ready, you decide to start him. And then you look and gauge interest with some of the other quarterback needy teams across the NFL and you look for trade partners. I think that's the play there. Because Jimmy Garoppolo, it's not like he's on a long-term contract. And when we talk about Justin Houston or Melvin Ingram, it's not like you need to free up a bunch of money to sign those guys. These are guys in their early 30s right now. I believe they're both 32. They're at the tail end of their careers. I still think they can be productive players. And I think the Niners should bring them in as purely depth pieces. I don't think they're going to cost all that much money. So going back to Jimmy G's restructure, I don't think you need to restructure that contract in order to pave way for Justin Houston or Melvin Ingram, but as depth guys, especially if D Ford shows that he's not healthy coming off the neck and back injuries, I would take a chance on either Justin Houston and or Melvin Ingram as camp bodies. The Edsta in the chat once again, do you think Mohammed Sanu will make a difference this season as a veteran wide receiver? I do, because outside of Brandon Aiyuk and Deebo Samuel, the pathway for somebody to take that wide receiver 3 spot, it's wide open. Jalen Hurd has to prove that he can stay healthy. Are some of the other lesser-known wide receivers going to be able to earn that wide receiver 3 spot? You're looking at Travis Benjamin. You're looking at like Jawan Jennings. Like there's a core group of guys who just really either haven't proven themselves or don't really have all that much talent. Now, Mohammed Sanu with the Niners last year, was he all that great? No. Did he blow you away? No. But the word out of Santa Clara is that he's come into camp in really, really good shape. He's been playing really, really well. And I think that the pathway for him to take over as wide receiver 3 is totally there. And if you put him in the slot as a veteran guy, I do think he can produce in this offense. Shout out to David Vielma for the $5 super chat. Pick one, Melvin Ingram or Justin Houston, and why? I'd go Justin Houston just because Melvin Ingram is kind of been banged up over the last couple of years, played in limited action last year with the Chargers, didn't record a sack for the first time in his nearly decade career. I like Justin Houston because the production is simply still there. He was good for the Colts last year. I believe he had like 8 sacks, even though he's at the twilight of his career right now. I'm going Justin Houston. Think he's the better player, and I also just think that the health concerns with Ingram are there. So if I had to pick one, it's Justin Houston. I appreciate the question. Another super chat coming in from Vance Doherty. I believe this is €5, but correct me if I'm wrong. You give Aiyuk, Trey Lance, and not short pass Jimmy, and he'll make the Pro Bowl. Yeah, so if you're watching our live show, we talked about the possibility of Brandon Aiyuk making it to the Pro Bowl in year 2 during our news and rumors segment. Jimmy Garoppolo is a pretty solid quarterback. Like, he's 22-8 as the Niners starter. I don't want to slight him because I think the talent is there. I think the production has been there. The one season where he stayed fully healthy, he really did help lead the 49ers to the Super Bowl, even though he didn't really have to pass all that much during the playoffs. But there's no doubt Trey Lance has a stronger arm. He's a better athlete. He's the more explosive player. He's the more dynamic player. So I do think that he can open up a lot of things offensively for this Niners offense, and yes, those wide receivers will benefit once Trey Lance is starting to rip it. Move on to this question from Anthony Ragone. He's watching us every single week. Will we finally see Jalen Hurd in a regular season game? I mean, I hope so, and the Niners certainly hope so, and I hope that Jalen Hurd can stay healthy to earn that wide receiver 3 spot, because I think Mohammed Sanu's spot is better suited as wide receiver 4 or a backup slot guy. Jalen Hurd in the preseason back in 2019 in that game against the Dallas Cowboys showed some flashes that just made your jaw drop and made you say, wow. I mean, this guy is a physical specimen. He's a big-bodied wide receiver who's not just limited to jump balls. He can run crossers. He can run bubble screens. He can be that red zone threat as well. Really, the whole route tree for Jalen Hurd is there. He started his career as a running back at Tennessee. Then he transferred to Baylor. 3rd-round pick who hasn't even been on the field for a regular season game. So it's everybody's hope that we will see Jalen Hurd in a regular season game this year. How about this question from George Kittle's nephew? Saw the video on Jason Verrett and Melvin Ingram. Do you think Ingram would be a solid addition to the Niner empire? Yeah, in case you missed it, pushed out a video on, Wednesday, just talking about how Jason Verrett took to Twitter, quote, retweeted a tweet from the NFL. The NFL sent out a tweet saying, which team would Melvin Ingram look best on? Jason Verrett retweeted that and said, yo, Melvin Ingram, with those dreads swinging, you'd look good in a Niners jersey, and I agree. I do think Ingram would be a solid addition to the Niner empire. I think that if he's able to get back and be healthy, he can give you 4 or 5 sacks as a backup at this point of his career. The production really had been there for a long time previous to last year. So, look, going back to that previous question, I'd go Justin Houston over Melvin Ingram, but Melvin Ingram would be a solid option if the Niners don't go with Houston or if he signs elsewhere. Kill a Dynamite with this question. Do you think we should re-sign Richard Sherman to a 1-year deal? We've talked about this a lot on the Niners Report. I don't see why you wouldn't at this point. And I'm actually somewhat surprised that Richard Sherman hasn't signed anywhere. We were talking about this in the Chat Sports office this past week. It's like, yo, Richard Sherman is still on the market. Is this by design by him to make more money, to see which suitors are out there, to try to play the leverage game? I'm not sure, but I'm actually surprised he hasn't re-signed with the team or signed with the team this late in the process, because I still think that he can be a legitimate corner. But to answer your question, yeah, I would re-sign Richard Sherman because I still think that he could be a very, very good player in this Niners defense. How about this question from a pimp named Slickback? All right, quite the channel name right there. Yo, Chase, what 49ers could make it to a Pro Bowl this year? Good question. I mean, this Niners team is loaded right now. On the offensive line, I think Trent Williams could make it to a Pro Bowl. I think Aiyuk and Deebo Samuel could make it to a Pro Bowl. George Kittle, year in and year out, could be a perennial Pro Bowl player. He has been throughout his career so far. That's why he got that big contract. Fred Warner, Dre Greenlaw, Javon Kinlaw, I think could make it to a Pro Bowl this year. I think he's a prime breakout candidate entering year 2. In that secondary, maybe a guy like Jason Verrett, but those are a few names who I think could be Pro Bowl bound here in 2021.